All right. So, starting off, where do you work?
I work for the Flight Standards District Office for the FAA. I'm an aviation safety inspector, and my my specialty is maintenance.
Okay.
So we have a lot of different facets in the FAA and different specialties. I'm on my second specialty. When I first started with the agency just over 3 years ago, I worked at air traffic control, and I was there for about 6 or 7 months, and I then transferred over to become an aviation safety inspector.
Okay. So, you've been in this position for how long?
I've been about 3 years,
About
through
three
just
years.
over 3 years now.
Okay.
So I'm a new guy. I'm still kind of boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And
that
you've been with the
that's
FAA for how many years total?
3.5.
3.5. Okay. Is the FAA the only federal agency that you've been with?
Uh, yeah. So my background is was military for just over 4 years, and then I worked in the industry for a couple of different airlines as starting off as like a mechanic, and then eventually becoming a maintenance supervisor
Mm-hmm.
for commercial aircraft. And then, as I got a little bit older, I wanted the stability of the FAA. I wanted to have a more predictable schedule. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know when I was going home. I wanted to be able to actually use my vacation time. So that's kind of what drove me to the FAA. I didn't want to be out on a cold tarmac at 2 o'clock in the morning working on an aircraft anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Understandable. So, where were you in the military?
I was in the Navy. I
Okay.
was an aircraft electrician's mate. I went in the late '90s and got out in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and and I did about a year of schooling and then about 3 years of active duty after that. So when I got out, we have to have to work on aircraft in the United States. You have to have what's called, well, there's certain cases where this wouldn't be applicable if you were working under somebody else who was licensed, but to get hired in the industry, you have to have an airframe and power plant license, and that requires some schooling. And I didn't really come from a lot of money or anything like that, so I chose the military route, got the experience there, and was able to take the exams when I got out of the military. And I was immediately hired by a pretty good sized airline on the
Mm-hmm.
day that I got out, and like overnight, I doubled my pay. It was. I really enjoyed my life back then. It was a great. It's been a great career overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I've always been fighting this like thing where like I got out right around just after 9/11, like a year or two after that, and the aviation industry had been crushed by that. They were only a couple of days away from going bankrupt, and that's just how they always operated. And the unions were, they were, and I'm not necessarily pro or negative union, but they were paying like baggage handlers stupid money, and it just wasn't sustainable. So when they had those issues back in September 11th, it crushed the industry for a while, and it
Mm-hmm.
took time to come back. So I've always been worried about being laid off um, throughout my career, because it's every economic downturn that we have, all the airlines usually start laying people off. So you try to put yourself in a position where you're valuable enough that they don't want to lay you off.
Yeah. So, in the FAA, do you feel like you've been okay? You've been safe?
So yes and no. So when I first started and I went to air traffic, um, I first of all, I was not an air traffic controller. I worked on the infrastructure and the ancillary systems, and it it was a good job, and it kind of related to what I did in the military, because on the back end of there's a lot of electronics, radar systems, and et cetera, that are ground based units that track the aircraft, and they're similar to the systems on the aircraft. So I could speak the lingo, and I understood how avionics work. So I went there kind of working on radar systems and whatnot. If you were not able to pass some of the exams as you went through that system, they would bump you out. In that, they told you that day one. But fortunately, I didn't have any issues there. I was able to get through it. Um, so that was like kind of the only instability I felt kind of in the beginning. Once I became qualified, made it through all the classes, I almost was immediately picked up as an ASI at a flight standards office. Um, Once you're at the flight standards office, the way that the way that department works is it's not. they don't take people right out of school. They don't typically take young people. You have to have a certain amount of industry experience to make it to that level. And they typically keep the amount of industry experience that you have to have at a level where guys and girls that are starting there are, you know, finding somebody in their late 30s is an anomaly. Most all
Hmm.
of us are 40 to 50, 60 years old. So no, I don't feel any pressure as far as it being laid off or furloughed or anything like that. I don't feel a lot of it, but the policy changes that have been made with the new regime have certainly affected how we do business and where and how we spend our resources. So short of it, mm, definitely not really feeling any insecurity with the job, but um, how we operate in our specific geographic situation, I feel some stress from the return to office policies on how we operate.
Okay, tell me about that.
Um, so I have never had a remote job. It has never been, and even prior to the return to office, it wasn't really a remote job.
Hmm.
The way my day to day life is and what I do for the FAA is my primary responsibility is kind of at the lower level of aircraft safety. So I'm kind of the boots on the ground that if you see a FAA out on the ramp, I'm the guy looking over the aircraft. I'm the guy making sure that the pilot has his license, his medical is good, the condition of the aircraft is satisfactory for safe flight. So I go around from airport to airport, and I have operators that are commercial that are assigned to me that are located geographically very far from my office. So previous to the return to office, what I would do is like say Monday morning, I'd kind of have a plan. I'd be like, I'm going to go to the northwest, and I'm going to go to these two or three different airports and do surveillance there and deal with the operators that are assigned to me. And then I'm going to come home. I'm going to do my paperwork, and there was full accountability. Like we're all adults here. You know, you're always going to probably have somebody trying to game the system a little bit, but what changed was with the mandatory return to office is my office is located about an hour and 40 minutes to the east of me. All of my certificates in primary areas of responsibility that I have are actually northwest of me for the most part. So now I have to drive an hour and 40 minutes in the wrong direction to report to work to get a government vehicle to drive an hour and 40 minutes. And then I pass my house again. And then I end up, up in, the upper Northwest area. So it's kind of counterproductive in that regard. And it, I think ideally, if the dust were to settle and I was to have a choice in the decision making um, with my particular office and our situation, and it's like this for a lot of flight standards offices, I would probably give each inspector a government car, or I would remotely locate different government vehicles to like police stations and state police barracks and just certain areas geographically that make sense uh, to use your resources as wisely as possible. We used to in the past have several different vehicles located across a couple of different states, so you don't get any mileage reimbursement in your own personal vehicle, but you can use the government vehicle, and that's their preferred method of travel, and that's fine. And I'm not talking about these a 20-minute ride somewhere. I'm talking about some of my operators are 3.5 hours each way. So having a vehicle that was within half an hour or so of my house, being able to go get it and go do my job, it gave me more time out in the field to actually have my eyes on what's going on, less commuting time, and certainly my morale's kind of taken a bit of a hit where I have to drive 3 hours just to come back to where I started from. It's kind of silly. So that's kind of my take on that. And I think a lot of people were hired during COVID when they had these telework policies in place. And when they were brought on board, one of the incentives was, hey, if this guy or girl lives up in this Northeast area, they can remain there. We can assign them work up in that area because that's our area of geographic responsibility. And then they can go deal with that. And it saved us time, money, and resources by doing that. So where we're all pulled back into this one, I guess, central geographic location, um, a lot of people were hired that were 2.5 hours plus away from the office, and now they're like, oh, you have to come in 5 days a week now and start your day here. So, and we're not talking entry level people. We're talking about highly experienced operations and maintenance inspectors um, that had to leave because they just couldn't do the commute. So we're starting over again. We were once fully staffed. Now we're kind of they're slowly dwindling away. We were not eligible for any of the RIF or not RIF. I'm sorry, the buyout that they had, where they would pay you into September. None of my series, aviation safety inspectors, and I believe aviation safety technicians, which is one step down, were uneligible from that offer because we had several high time people in the office that were on the verge of retirement anyway. They attempted to put in for it and were denied. As far as people that were let go that were in the probationary period, it did not directly affect my office because we didn't have any of that type of staff that was eligible to be let go. But I know throughout the FAA and some of the administrative admin spots that I believe people were let go that were on their probation there. But it just created a lot of stress and turmoil when they did this. And I think that the organization as a whole, we all care. We all really want the airspace to be safe. Certainly, there's areas that were wasteful and that could be consolidated. But this is getting stressful to be driving to three and a half hours your day just to be commuting when this wasn't the deal when I got hired. They changed the goalpost, in my opinion, a little bit. And if it was to reel it in and see like what the staffing actually looked like, maybe that makes a little bit of sense. But we all have more work than we know what to do with. We're all overburdened with the amount of work that we have. Like, we're not just sitting with our feet up on a desk somewhere. We have a lot going on. And this is not a get rich game either. I've heard you talk in your previous your previous TikToks, or not you, but your people you're interviewing. And we're not making this huge fat check over here. It offers some stability. It allows me to come off the hangar floor and kind of put my toolbox away and just kind of share my experience and my real world knowledge out in the field when I look at how operators are conducting business with their aircraft and the people that buy tickets to get on them. Those are the people I'm responsible to.
Yeah. So, uh, speaking of your commute, what time do you have to leave in the morning to make sure that you get to the office on time?
Well, one of the advantages that they did let us keep, we have several different work schedules that you can be on. I'm currently on something that's called, I think it's a maxi flex schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I have um, basically on a normal 2 week pay period between Monday and Friday of the 2 weeks, separated by the weekends. Any weekend work requires special approval. You can't just willy nilly work on a weekend. So Monday through Friday, for those 10 days, basically, I have to get 80 hours
Mm-hmm.
between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand some of those may have just changed, like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. now. I think there's been a change, but basically it's been 6 to 6 Monday through Friday. Get your 40 hours. They expect you present during core hours of business, which is kind of like the 9 to 2 area where you have the most interactions with the stakeholders and flying public. So I typically like to get to work right at 6, and I leave about 4:30 to get that done. Um,
Wow.
yeah, well, I'd like to do like a 7 to 3:30 or something, but the problem is if I leave after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my commute home is extended significantly by school buses and just more people getting out of work. So I try to do it as efficiently as I can. So if I leave at 4:30, um, I'll be there by 6, and if I can leave by 2:30, I'm home by 4:05 maybe. So it's a significant amount of commuting, and it's kind of unnecessary in my opinion. At least for my situation, I was doing well when I was able to be remote from the house and just go directly out to the operators. And the term operator is like a commercial entity. So somebody who's charging money to put, to fix an aircraft or to charge for a plane seat ticket. They're certificated entities, we call them. So they're repair stations, they're cargo operators, they're aircraft for hire, basically. Um, those are my primary areas of focus. So I spend a significant amount of time in the field. I spend probably even a little bit more time doing data entry in front of my computer, where I gather all the information that I've seen, and I enter it into our programs, and it helps us manage the risk. So I do a little more data entry than I'd like to do. I'd like to be out in the field a little bit more, but I'm able to make it work.
So before, did you have a government car at your house, or how were you?
No, 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 no. That's frowned down upon. I think that it's been abused before in the past. It's not doesn't it's not a great look to have one of those parked in your driveway. Um,
So then how would you get compensated previously for your travels to and from places?
so what I would do is I would take my personal vehicle and I would drive to the location of the nearest government car. We call them G cars. I would then sign that car out. It has a gas card. I would go do whatever work I had to do. I would leave my car behind where that car was parked, and then I would come back. They were typically at like police stations, and then up at our main office, there would be several of them there as well. So I would go there, swap my vehicle for that vehicle. So I'm literally not charging anything. It's just whatever the government's paying for that car, the fuel, in my time.
Yeah, and they can't do that now. They can't keep the cars anymore at the police station for you to do that.
They they were brought back when this big change happened with the administration. They were all pulled back to the main office. So if you want a government vehicle, you have to go there and get the vehicle. So if I have you know I have to drive 3 hours to go get the car basically, and start back where I was. Whereas if you know they had them where they were, it was way more efficient. If they were kind of spread around the region, and in places of where we have the most risk, like the larger airports where we have more operators at, if we had kept them around there, because it makes sense to have, if you're covering a huge geographic area, it makes sense to spread your people out, because spending 3.5 hours, like for example, now if I want to go to the operator that's the furthest away from me, um, from the office that I have assigned to me, I have to get a hotel. I have to drive to my main office, get a car, and then I have to drive, 3.5 to 4 hours to get to the operator. Now I've already been on the road for an hour and a half, so I'm 5, 6 hours into it at this point, and then I have to do my work there and then drive back. Well, it was extending to too many hours, so now we'll get a hotel room for a night or two. So whereas before we may not have always had to do that. Now, if I have to go up for an extended period of time, it makes sense to get a hotel. But if I just need to go up and do something for a couple hours, you know, it's a waste of resources to do it the way that we're doing it now. But I'm hoping things change in the future. But
Yeah, so do you have to go into the building, say hello to your supervisor, or
oh
do you,
yeah, there's a whole half an hour of your life you'll never get back.
yeah, so when you get
100%.
so now when you go to the building to get the car, you have to go talk in person to your boss before you go and take the car. Is that how it
Uh,
works?
no, well, the reason I say it's like a half hour of your life you don't get back is because no, I don't have to go in there and talk to him, but I have to go there. It's a big building. I have to scan a couple IDs to get into it. It's a several minute walk from my vehicle. Then you get up there, you go up the elevator, you get you get the keys for the vehicle, and then a couple people will stop you in the hall and ask how you end up engaging with people. So you'll be there for 20 minutes, half an hour sometimes to get a car. It's not like you just show up, the keys in a lockbox, you grab the car and go. But I
Yeah,
don't have to go in and report to my supervisor.
yeah. So then
It's
my
not mandatory, but just the fact it takes 15, 20 minutes at the minimum to go into the office, get a car, get out to the car, and get going. So it does eat time there too.
Yeah, so my thought is that if you're not even talking to your boss or your team, that's not part of the process of getting the car and ensuring that you're
No,
like clocking in to get the car to go out. You're still
no.
acting remote because you're not engaging with your boss or your supervisors, anybody like that, to go out and do the work, right? So
No, no,
to
you
me,
don't. And
it
no,
sounds like it's a similar process when the cars were housed at the police station, right? Like you would go in and get the keys, I'm sure sign in, show your license and your badge and all that stuff,
so no,
what you
actually,
need to
we had a
do, and
better
then
setup. They would be parked in a parking lot that we had permission to be in, and we would keep a lockbox on the vehicle. So you
mhm,
literally park next to it, pop the lockbox, get the keys, hop in the car, clean the snow off if there's any snow on it, and then you're gone. So no, you didn't have to go engage. Occasionally, when I first started and I would go there, I would go in just to let them know, hey, I'm a new guy. That's my car over there. I'll be back,
mhm.
in a couple of days or something if I was going on a long trip. But no, it was more efficient to have them there. To have a lockbox on the car. But
Yeah, and at the building, you don't even have to go in and talk with your team or anything. You're still just taking the keys and running.
no, no, because even now, we we communicate a lot through Microsoft Teams, and everybody that I work with is in there. You can see their status. You can hover over them and see where they're at that day. We have a requirement to put several days of upcoming work into the team status message. So if I know that Tuesday I'm going to be in, whatever town, whatever state, I'll put Tuesday, 7/28, whatever the date is, I'll be at this airport. And I usually just put the 3-letter identifier at that airport. So anybody can go look and see, hey, this guy is, he's going to be over here this day. And then I have a cell number that obviously that somebody can contact me on. But we're, we don't have like, one of the nice things about being a little bit older and being in a field with people that have been in the industry for a long time, a lot of the things that you would have working with like entry level people, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but we're working with a more mature group that's been vetted, and we're all, we all understand our roles and responsibilities, and very rarely do I see anything that is uh, somebody doing something they're not supposed to be doing or wasting time or anything like that. So we're pretty responsible here. We have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders for what we do for work, and we all take it very seriously. Um, it's not a thing where like I don't know where this guy is. He doesn't report in. He doesn't tell us what he's doing. Everybody knows where everyone's at. It's a pretty tight knit community, and we don't put up with problems, and we don't hire problems. You have to have you have to have a good long, reasonably good track record to get in here. So all these young kids that are fresh, that you start somewhere at a entry level job, and they're pulling, calling in sick and, doing all, we don't have those issues there. Everybody's pretty squared away. We had a lot of weight on our shoulders too for what we do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a lot of you like, I don't need a lot of guidance from my supervisors. And they're always there if I need them, for the most part, but I don't get micromanaged. I don't feel I get micromanaged at all. Like if I have an issue, I'll call them up. They expect me to be a big boy and take care of the people that I'm responsible for. So I don't have anybody hovering over me to see what I'm doing all day long. I'm not saying that's like that everywhere in the FAA, but my current situation is I have pretty good management for the most part.
Yeah, that's great. So you said that you guys are dwindling down, but you guys were not eligible for the buyout programs or the Vera.
Correct. So excuse me, I'm chewing on some ice. When when I first showed up to the agency, or to the flight standards office, um, we had a number of people retire uh, prior to me showing up, and it was one of the reasons the position opened up. And for some reason, all of the people that had like, they went many years without hiring people, so you had this generation in there that was, right at the end of their career, and then they started retiring, and then the agency said, oh my god, we're losing a lot of people, and they started hiring like crazy. So we have a lot of new, lesser experienced inspectors, although still competent and qualified, that have entered the agency in the last 5 to 6, 7 years to replace the people that retired. Many of them during the COVID era retired because they either were concerned about getting sick, they were older, maybe the health wasn't the greatest, or they initially didn't want to take the shots, the vaccines for it. And a lot of people, stood on that soapbox and said, no, I'm not taking them. And they just elected to retire. So we lost a lot of people during that. A whole bunch of new people came in, myself included. We're all hired under this point where you can telework and then be responsible for your geographic kind of area of the certificates that you manage. And that was the premise we were hired upon. So we lost a lot of the older senior people to the retirements and whatnot. Now we have all these people that got hired, that live 2.5 hours away from the office that just can't do the commute. It just doesn't. The math doesn't math. You can't stay in a hotel, at $140 a night and still, bring a paycheck home, let alone be away from your family all the time like that, Monday through Friday. And then we have the people that were kind of on the fence about retiring anyway, and they enjoyed the telework, agreement that we had, and we're like, it's time to hang my hat up. So we lost people that just didn't want to come back to the office full time. They just didn't want to do it. And these, I haven't seen anybody leave my office that didn't directly adversely, lower the amount of people that were, competent and qualified there. And it went and it drove the workload up for everybody else. In all of the work that these people had that was assigned to them that have left will typically be sent to other offices that are able to handle it, but they're even further away. So everybody still has an inspector assigned to them, but they would now maybe be in office 2 or 3 states away. Obviously, you can see how there's a little bit of lack of oversight if you're 10 hours away from, the person you got to be inspecting. It becomes much more difficult. But things now, definitely a reduction of people in the office. So we're just a little more stressed, a little more strained, trying to keep our head above water. And the way that we operate as far as becoming a qualified inspector to go out in the field and be able to do our job and make decisions requires a significant amount of training. So approximately the first year that you're hired by the flight standards office, you're spending your time in school and getting the training you need to effectively do your job. So you can't just hire, even if you hire somebody who's great and super experienced, they're out in training for a year, and they're not an asset to the office until they become fully qualified and trained. So the hiring pipeline is lengthy for this. So
Are you guys on a hiring freeze right now?
no, we are not.
Okay.
We are not. I think some of the admin roles might be on a hiring freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say admin roles, I'm talking like door greeters, people that take care. Honestly, they're people we really need. Like they're the ones that, like when I go out and deal with an accident or something, they're the people that order all the gear that I need, like the PPE and all the stuff, all the ancillary stuff that goes along behind the scenes. Those people, I think, are on a hiring freeze. So, that kind of hurts a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
no. But long and short of it, we're not under a hiring freeze right now.
Okay. But it still takes a year of training before anybody's actually helpful to you guys.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like, oh, they're useless or something, but they can't go out by themselves and conduct oversight.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be, with a trainer. They have a lot of classes that are required, that are taught out in Oklahoma City. They're great classes. It's good. It's all good stuff. It's all relevant, and I'd say 95% of it has helped me. Some of it's a little redundant, but how things work on the enforcement and surveillance side is different than being a mechanic or different than being a pilot. You have to understand a lot of things. That there's a lot of different specialties in aviation. There's all the different types of aircraft. You have the weights, categories, the FAR part numbers that they fly under. There's a lot to it. I mean, I deal with everything from gliders and hot air balloons all the way up to passenger jets.
Mm-hmm. So your day-to-day job has changed and that now it takes you a lot longer to actually go and do the job because you don't have access to the government vehicle right away. Um, have you experienced any changes in the policies and how you actually implement and do your day-to-day job?
Um, I don't think we've really had any major changes in the way that we the way that we conduct business out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the rules and regulations are always constantly going through, updates and changes and whatnot. But for the most part, there hasn't been any huge thing come out where, hey, we need to go focus on this or focus on that, or we need more surveillance here or there. It's primarily been, you know, the public wants to see you in the office Monday through Friday, and that's the image that we need to have. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm a Republican. Like I lean to the right,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to see the money that I spend in my tax dollars be used wisely.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, where they're coming from in that regard, but the situation for everybody is different.
Mm-hmm.
It would save them money to go back to the way that it was, at least at my office. I know it would save them money and there would be
Mm-hmm.
more boots on the ground because, I mean, ultimately, most of the risk, and the risk is safety, right? It's the airworthiness of the aircraft, the competence of the pilots that fly them, and the infrastructure which they rely on to fly in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. None of those three things exist in an office.
Yeah.
Okay. None of them. They're at the airport, they're in the aircraft, they're, you know, they're where policy, where maintenance is performed.
Mm-hmm.
The risk is not necessarily at the office. So, although a good part of what we do is data entry, when we go out and do surveillance, um, we have to make sure that they're complying with the regulations. So there's a whole big checklist of questions I have to ask in things I have to look for when I'm watching work being performed, or a pilot operating an aircraft, or even a ground handler and how he's towing the aircraft. The condition of the airport at which it's at. There's a lot of different things that I need to be out in the field looking at. The risk is not at the office. We should be a little bit more boots on the ground. And by returning back to the way that it was, at least for the telework policy in my department, would make more sense to me to have our boots on the ground looking at the risk than where we're at right now. And I think eventually the pendulum will come back a little bit, and they'll realize, hey, um, we need to get more people with their eyes on the aircraft, the eyes on the operators. I think the FAA is kind of taken a bit of a beating in the eye of the public and the media with the recent aviation events that we've had. And it's one of those things where, at least in my arena and what I'm responsible for, I haven't seen really an uptick in anything or anything egregious going on. I just think that it makes the news more often now because it became a hot button topic when the issue that big aircraft manufacturer had, I'm not going to mention their name, that with air quality control issues potentially that they have. And then you have the DCA accident between the helo and the passenger jet, and it's a horrible thing that's happened, and it brings the spotlight back onto us and who's the regulatory authority on it. And we have the responsibility to prevent things like that from happening in the future. Um, but I think overall, in general, we are the safest airspace in the world, inside the United States. And, we have highly talented people out there that really care, that want to do the right thing and prevent things like this from happening. So we kind of it's a black eye to us to have things like this happen. And we need to be more boots on the ground and out in the field preventing things like that from happening, you know? So but I do also think there's a certain amount of it comes up in the news more now because the spotlight's on us. So anytime anything happens, it's, it makes the news. It's just the news cycle that we're in right now. 5 years from now, it's going to be something totally different. Be some other agency, some other department, some other hot button. As the news cycle continues and they get bored about hearing about aircraft safety, it'll be something else. So and we'll
Yeah.
still be there doing our thing, trying to keep it safe.
Yeah. So, kind of on that line, with the air traffic controllers right now, have you heard if they're understaffed?
Um, so I can speak to ATC a little bit. Um, ATC since day one of its inception has always had a struggle to get qualified people. It has always been a thing. Um, when I started with the agency in back in 2022 ish, and I went to air traffic, it they always met the standards of having the proper amount of people up in that cab that needed to be there. But with that being said, a lot of them were working overtime, working extra days to fill in for that. Um, it never has been, at least of my opinion, that the FAA didn't want to hire more air traffic controllers. It was just a matter of obtaining them, finding them, getting them to come on board, getting them to pass the training. The ATC training out in Oklahoma City has a really high failure rate. There's a lot of people that don't make it through that training. It's not easy. You got to juggle a lot of things up there and be 6 moves ahead on the chess game. And I got a lot of respect for the men and women that do that work because it is not easy. Um, I think that they could definitely hire more, and I would like to see more added. I'd like to see improvements to the infrastructure done. Um, but it's always been an issue with the FAA. Like, it's just, if the pool of people aren't there, what do you do? You know, you have commerce has to happen. You have to still keep flying. They have to mitigate. They can't say, all right, we can't fly anymore because we don't have enough air traffic controllers. We're going to shut the whole system down. They have to bounce people around and manage that risk and keep the risk as low as it possibly can be with what they have. But it's always been an issue. It's never been like, oh, they don't want to hire anyone. Then the 3+ years that I've been here, you could always go on USA Jobs and see a position open for an air traffic controller. And in the probably 7 months of my career that I've spent out in Oklahoma City doing training, they have always had an air traffic school going and cadets going in and out of that building to get trained up. So, they need more. Yeah, I think they need more. They're hard to get though. This isn't like you just everybody makes it. There's not a lot of people that want to do that work. You work in a dark room. You got a lot of stress on you. You know, I know their pay is. I think it's pretty good. I've never really spoken to them about that, but it seems like there's a lot of incentives to try and do it. But people that want to do it versus people that can do it, there's a lot that just don't make it. And I think that that's an issue that that HR and OPM and just finding the people that are willing and qualified to do it. You know,
Yeah.
so
And
maybe an answer to that is and I'm just throwing this out there, but if you improve the technology, you can reduce the people. So, and I'm not saying get rid of them. I'm just saying if you can improve the automation and the technology of how the airspace is handled and how we communicate with the pilots and aircraft, you take the human error factor out of it for one, because a large portion of all aircraft aviation related incidents are traced back to human factors and human error. So getting the human out of it is, to the extent possible with automation, is probably the answer that we should be looking at right now. But that's way over my pay grade.
yeah. So, kind of talking about the technology a little bit for air traffic controllers, there's, this talk in the media that the systems that are used are ancient, that there's like copper wires that are used, easily hackable by foreign adversaries. Would you be able to speak on that at all?
So I was no high level technician. I'll say that, right. I was a brand new guy coming in. Um, and I worked on it. I can't go into any specifics of the system in and of itself. Um, but I would describe it like this. The system that the air traffic controllers are using as they sit in their tower cab or they sit at a TRACON or an en route center, that particular system is pretty technologically advanced. I'm sure some people would argue with that, but that's a good system. But the problem that I kind of saw with it is all the things that feed that scope, your radars, your ADS-B systems, your radios, all of those ancillary items that are required to put the dot on that radar map, that the guy in the cab is looking at, the ATC guy. All of those systems vary in age. Uh, they vary in manufacturer. So they have a lot of older systems plugged into this new modern system or newer modern system, and they aren't always as reliable as you would like them to be. So you could have, like, say, a radar system that's 25, 30 plus years old plugged into a brand new system, and the data in is only as good as 30 or 40-year-old technology. So what they do, I think, to kind of combat a little bit of that is they'll have 5 or 6 radars all looking at an area, and they compare all of them together. If one maybe were to go down, you don't lose everything. So I think that's the back end systems, the ancillary systems that need to be upgraded. Now, I will tell you that where I worked, um, we didn't have anything falling apart. We didn't have anything that was like held together by duct tape. We just had older equipment that required a little more maintenance, but it wasn't like, it wasn't as bad as I think as the media makes it out. Now, there's other areas in the country. Obviously, I worked in. I'm only speaking from one place. Maybe some areas aren't as great as the other. I think that the system needs upgrades. It needs to constantly be being upgraded. You can't sit on it. I think you constantly have to be doing thinking about the future and evolving. So I wouldn't think that that should be any surprise to anybody. That, hey,
Yeah.
these systems are getting older. There should be a long-term plan, in my opinion, placed out that, as these things age, where are we going to put our resources and how are we going to develop better things? And there needs to be a program running for that that's actually implementing it. So, but it's not, I think, as bad as the media makes out. It could certainly use some improvements, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is FAA under Department of Transport, or are you guys your own agency?
So we work under the Department of Transportation. I think is a like our mother, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we we work alongside, like, with the NTSB, like doing accident investigations and whatnot. But our parentship is a DOT, but it's such a huge web of different organizations and divisions within the DOT and FAA, and you that I'm just this tiny little cog in the wheel at the bottom, just seeing kind of how it goes around. I don't write policy. I don't even have a desire to write policy. I just implement and follow the guidance and the rules that we have now. And,
Mm-hmm.
I try to use my life experience of being boots on the ground and mechanic out in the field and seeing how things actually work and understanding what they're doing, when I'm not looking versus when I'm looking, because I've been on the other side of this coin before. So
Mm-hmm.
I know where to look, when to look, and I can usually read people pretty well. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you've talked a little bit about some challenges that you're experiencing, and again, mostly on the transportation side. Is there any other aspect of your job right now that you find to be a challenge under this Trump administration?
No, I mean, I can't. I mean, I'm trying to keep my political thoughts out of this as much as possible, because I like I said, I want to see the tax dollar go as far as it can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to leave people out on the streets to die. Like, I'm not that guy either. But I want to see my money spent in a way that reflects my morals and values as well. And I want people to work hard for what they have, or at least be willing to work hard for what they can get. And I'm willing to help people out that are willing to do that. But uh, I take issue with maybe money being spent where people are able and willing to do, or able but unwilling to do it, if that makes sense. So I don't want to get off on a tangent on that, but there hasn't been a major upset uh, with this administration change, other than maybe the return to office thing, which
Mm-hmm.
people are, I've been going into work every day for 20 plus years anyway. I only had a couple of years of, of doing the telework thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I can honestly tell you, I wouldn't have been in support of it if I hadn't been through it, done it, and seen that it works, at least for what I do, because it does. It
Mhm.
does work. We still can collaborate with each other through teams. Um, it puts us closer to where the risk is. Um, if this was a situation where, we were only responsible for one small area, I could see being going into the office. I could see going over there every day. But when you're covering a geographic area that's huge, and you're responsible for it, it makes sense to station the people where they're using the least amount of resources to at least respond to the areas that they need to be in, where they're doing surveillance and investigations and just general oversight.
Mhm.
But I haven't taken, it hasn't been a cut in pay. There hasn't, I haven't seen anything like they haven't taken any vacation time from us. You know, uh, I haven't felt like any type of financial pressure on this other than maybe the additional fuel that I consume to get back and forth to work.
Mhm.
Um, and it affects my psyche a little bit, my morale. Morale's not, I wouldn't say the morale is as good as it was prior to this in
Mhm.
some regards, but and some of the things that he's doing, I do agree with. So you're not always going to have your cake and eat it too. So, if we can have a good, efficient government, and there's got to be a little pain along the way, I'm okay with that. But let's not take a sledgehammer to the problem. Let's go in and actually look at it, have some discussion and implement changes with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. And we kind of have been taking the sledgehammer approach to it, in the beginning. Well, let's stop doing that and go in and actually look at what works and what doesn't,
Mhm.
because I think that that's where people would get the most of their money from, where the tax dollar goes.
Yeah. So I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
Um, so under the Trump administration at your job, have you experienced any positive changes?
In the job, no. Um, I haven't really I can't really say that I've seen anything that's like, oh man, since he came in, this changed, and this is great now. I haven't seen anything like that. But I haven't really seen anything super negative other than, at least in my arena, then hey, you guys all got to go in the office. That's where the public wants you, and I understand why a lot of people feel that way too. So I'm not naive to that. It's I wouldn't have appreciated it either if I hadn't been in a position to actually do it, see how it works, and see, at least specific to my situation, um, why it made more financial sense to do what, the way we were doing things. Because I had actually like more time to do my actual job,
Mhm.
instead of driving around, like what burning government gas, freaking burning government fuel in a government vehicle that they have to pay for and put tires on and maintain. So I think we were more efficient prior to that. Now there was probably a lot of inefficiency that behind the scenes that I don't see here and there. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, there's things that need to be revamped, like the travel system, like how we get reimbursement for that.
Mhm.
I can't even. It boils my blood to explain how many hours I have put into just doing travel claims for easy, simple things that should be straightforward. They've seen it 100 times before. I shouldn't have to enter 30 different codes into a travel claim for one night at a hotel where they know the rate. It's all pre-programmed in the system, but it turns into sometimes hours of back and forth and up through a chain of different approvals and whatnot. You know,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the day, I'm the one who gets the credit card bill for it that has to pay for it. So it's like it shouldn't take hours to do a travel claim sometimes.
Yeah. I used to do travel arranging and reimbursement for like 50% of the time at my previous job.
Yep.
And we use the
You
system.
too.
I used to do that. I don't have a job at my federal job anymore. I got doged, but that's what I used to do for like 50% of my time. So, do you guys use Concur?
I'm not familiar with that system.
No. Okay. But yeah, I'm familiar with the reimbursements and stuff.
It's highly aggravating. I mean, it's kind of like it's like press six for it's like getting on the phone with the computer, like press six if you want to talk to so and so. And it's like it just turns around in this big circle of, oh, you didn't have the right decimal point over here in this task code box,
Yep.
and or something so stupid takes hours to fix and has to go back and forth several times. I don't know. I think that system could probably be um, streamlined, if you say.
Yeah, yeah. Um, just a quick little story. So I used to work in agriculture and I had to go. We had a group of exchange farmers who were from the Dominican Republic come in and see how we implement farm to table
Hmm.
in the area where I live. So I had to go out to the farm and meet the people, do the trainings with them, and all that stuff. And I had to use my personal vehicle because we don't, where I was, we don't have access to government vehicles.
You'd be reimbursed though, right?
That's the thing. I was
No.
not.
Right.
I had to drive like, I don't, hour and a half away, do the training and stuff with them. I had to go buy my own lunch and all that stuff. I was not reimbursed for it. So my total expenses for the day was like $70 because
Mhm.
of the tolls and expenses and all that stuff and gas and whatever. And they wouldn't reimburse me. So it was
Yeah,
like
I don't
my
even
$70.
understand.
Like it wasn't I didn't choose to go out there. It wasn't like I for funsies. It was part of my job that I had to go and do and they wouldn't reimburse me. So I understand it's frustrating. It's just like the little technicalities. I was like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't experienced issues getting reimbursed. It's just been the process to get reimbursed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's clunky. It's just clunky. I think that they could find a way to do it better because they have uh, the ability to track where every penny goes.
Yep.
You have to have a line item for everything, and there's already a daily rate figured out. There's a mileage rate figured out. There's all of these things are already pre-pro. There's a limit on how much a hotel can be. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you're shopping around to find a hotel that'll take a government rate, which
Mm-hmm.
is fine. Like I don't need to stay in a place that is a 5 star, but I don't want to come home with bed bugs either. It's going to be an issue. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's usually reasonable. But the whole process, I think, could be streamlined. I have not run into a case where they wouldn't reimburse me for something, but um, you know, I could see how maybe other agencies would be that way. But we travel so much that
Mm-hmm.
it's like it it consumes a significant amount of time from the inspector to do it, and they know what we do, where we go. Like there should be a press the button, you're going here. Hey, it better not cost more than this. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean there should be something simpler than how we're doing it. But you
Yeah.
know, I don't want to be paying people, to stay at $500 a night hotel when there was one that for 150 that was perfectly satisfactory either. So I get where they're coming from, but just cap the market rate in that area like they do now. I mean, it shouldn't be as difficult, but
Yeah.
no issues getting reimbursed, at least on my end.
That's good. So my last question to you is, what is a message that you would like to convey to the public about your job and your experiences?
Um, Geez, that's a great question. First of all, I've always wanted to. Um, it's been a career goal after probably 7 or 8 years of working in an industry that I would like to do my time as a technician, a mechanic, and a supervisor of mechanics in the airframe and power plant maintenance world, and then move on to the FAA, and finish the rest of my career with the FAA. It's always been a goal, and 3 years into it now, it isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, you know, but I'm still glad that I made the decision to come on board. And I would recommend that, anybody who hears this, um, and hears me understands that I'm wholly committed to the safety of the flying public. Like that keeps me up at night. So I care how it's going. I would recommend anybody that's or not anybody who meets the standards and requirements to become an FAA inspector of some type to look into it. It's a great deal. And to be totally honest with you, if this was 5, 10, let me say like 10 years ago, the conditions that I had to work in the civilian world, um, in the industry, were way harsher than what I have today. You know, I have an air conditioned office to sit in. I have transportation provided if I need it. I know what my schedule is going to be. When I work in the industry, um, when I would leave to go to work every day, I didn't know when I was coming home because there'd be an aircraft broken somewhere, and you'd be the guy, you'd have to go. So I always kept a bag of clothes in my car, truck, or whatever, and an extra set of tools. So, but that I love that job too, but I was just getting burned out on it towards the end. So I have a way more suitable working condition than I've ever had being out in the field as a technician. So I have really nothing to complain about. I think areas could be improved on, um, but I'm just drawing from my own experience.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate your time. Um, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me again.
Yeah, that's no problem. And I like I said, these are just my opinions and whatnot. I don't speak on the agency's behalf. I'm just kind of speaking to it as somebody that, I guess, if you're looking for a job with us, this is what a day in my life typically kind of looked like, is what I was trying to describe. If there's anything like in the future that you want to ask that I'm able to answer, I'd be more than happy to help you out. And I appreciate what you're doing. I've been following some of your content, and although I'm not, our views probably wouldn't always align. I appreciate seeing what the other side is doing. So it was nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, you too now. Bye bye.
Bye.